Good morning, and thank you for joining us. It's another episode of the DD Geopolitics live stream. I am your host, Sarah, and I am joined once again by John, as always. But looking forward to Andrei is here, needing no introduction. One of my favorite all-time guests, most fun. We're going to talk about Kursk, so it might not be that fun, but we will figure it out. But there, how are you today, Andrei?
I'm good, thank you.
And a special welcome back and shout out to the barracks. It is so good to see you in the chat again. Okay, let's get started. We'll get the Middle East out of the way so we can dive deeper into Kursk. So the situation has been changing really rapidly. You and I have talked about Israel a few times, but just in the last few weeks alone, Israel has requested additional troops. I think they asked for 10,000. And recalled all of those on leave. There's reports of multiple massacres, assassination of high-ranking Hezbollah, targeting of Hamas leader. Hezbollah then launched a successful attack last night. We're right now in limbo, waiting for Iran, and the situation seems kind of electric. With all of that said, I know it's a lot. But could you tell us about the current situation of the IDF and the strategical reasoning behind the recent assassinations? And also, could you inform us about the potential response from the Axis, if any?
Well, keep in mind, I'm not a specialist in the area. The only thing which I know that Netanyahu is ready to go to practically any lengths to stay in power. It is obviously politically driven by the internal situation in Israel, which is, well, for all intents and purposes, is on the verge of the economic and military collapse, from what I gather. So the fact that they exchange fires here and there and they pretend that they can go against Hezbollah and win is obviously preposterous, but that's why they need United States. They need United States to fight for Israel, essentially. So in terms of the reservists and all that, we saw their combat level of combat training of IDF starting from the 7th of October of this tragedy. Obviously, nobody denies that it was a terrorist act, and Israelis, got the way they handled it. Obviously, we see now, and they lost all kind of legitimacy now in the eyes of the primary most of the world in terms of what they are doing, which is essentially genocidal actions. And the only thing now is obviously Hezbollah and Iran. And the only thing I know is that everybody who is anybody actually in the in the area or talking with people in the area to try to stop escalation, because if Iran decides to attack, that will be much worse than it was the last time. And this time, they probably will be deliberately hitting some extremely sensitive targets, not being as selective as they did it last time, just to demonstrate things. This time they will pursue some military objectives directly to make sure that they hit the barracks, they hit the personnel, they hit some kind of the installations there, which are critical. So, and yeah, Israel will have nothing to counter it with. So that's the situation.
Okay, this one isn't a trick question, I hope. So there have been at least 3 cargo flights between Russia and Iran, like in the last week or so, with 2 flights going from Moscow to Tehran and 1 flight going back with a visit from Shoigu, who's now the Secretary of the Security Council. And there's rumors circulating that Iran is providing ballistic missiles to Russia, while Russia is supplying electronic countermeasure systems and air defense. Iran has obviously denied that, but can you confirm or clarify any of the?
Yeah, it's an old story with those Shahid drones. So yeah, it's like planes. Planes, they do have wing. 2 consoles of the wing. They have fuselage. They have the the empennage. So they have engines. Oh my God! So that must be Iranians do this too. So all this garbage is pure propaganda from Western media to at that time. So now if you follow it, you will not find it anymore. It's the fact that to demonstrate that Russian economy is collapsing and things of this nature. So it's all garbage. The Russian geranium drones are just common technical solution for this thing. And when you look attentively at the industrial capability of Russia, it is so much greater that and in terms of ballistic missiles, it's altogether stupidity of I don't know. Listen, those guys, I'm talking about media and political elites on the West, they are butthurt. They know, they really are being hysterical and desperate to grab, or grasp onto something, so they continue to invent what they will always do, as I already stated, they 9 advantages described in the field manual 3-0 in terms of operations. United States and the West don't have 8 of them. The only one they want to do is to do psyops, and psyops is so crude and it's so stupid and incompetent that at this point of time people laugh at them, so there are no the only way any kind of ballistic missile from Iran can appear there, which I doubt Russia will do it, but Russians can say, Iranians will ask, listen, can we try it in combat, something, to test one specimen? And Russians say, yeah, sure, go, because the combat experience and combat use is, of course, precious. Okay, this priceless. You gain the incredible experience while doing this in the real combat. That's the only way it could have happened, but Russia doesn't need ballistic missiles from Iran.
That's what cracked me up. But what about the visit? What did you make of Shoigu going there? Well, do you think that Russia's trying to kind of like tamper things down, or what do you think why do you think he was there?
Both. It's tampering down, but also Shoigu being a man in the loop for a long time now, and being on a very high position now with a really important position. And so he is there to discuss, obviously, the supply of the military equipment. And Iran was asking, and now Russia doesn't care anymore about sanctions. Rumor has it they already have the first 2 Su-35s there. So they want their full squadron, 12 at least, Su-35s. So, and I'm pretty sure they were discussing the military technological cooperation in this respect. So, and what weapon systems Russia can provide now, and what it will be in the long run. So that's pretty much, I think so. Apart from the overall geopolitical issues, and no doubt that the issue of, situation with Israel has been discussed and things of this nature, but I don't know. I wasn't there. I wish I was, but I wasn't there. So, and so
maybe you'll get invited to the next one.
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, we'll go to a place where I bet you wish you weren't, which is Kursk. So let's just get right into it. So the past week we watched Ukraine launch attacks on the region using they started off kind of small, fast-moving units, which that triggered a strong reaction from the Russian military bloggers. But can you provide us with an overview of the situation on the ground regarding these attacks and how it was perceived and discussed online? I know you love the bloggers, so I had to ask.
Oh, no, most of them, 99.9% of those bloggers are nincompoops. They are shysters. They have no military background on any serious tactical or operational level. They are ignoramuses. They are illiterate people like this Podolyak, or even those pathetic graduates of the Lvov political, officer school with the degree, with the faculty or department of journalism. Really? So, these people do not understand modern military technology. They certainly do not understand what operational planning is, because it's very complex. There is a lot of math. There is a lot of computers going on. Obviously, they will never understand, like Rybari or Podolyak, what system integration is, especially when it goes, especially the complex systems. And then, of course, there are other issues, like what are the basically communication networks, combat communication networks. They never dealt with them, believe me. So, and the only thing they know is how to hype. That's all about donations and monetization, and donations supposedly to help, Russian forces. And in order for them to get those money from those, hoi polloi, basically, who believe they're BS, so they lie. They just create things. They go into the Telegram channels of the closed Telegram channels of the guys, primarily of the NCO level at the most, okay? Officers are not allowed to do this. So the guys say, okay, some flew in and exploded. And they, immediately. So they have 2 divisions of Ukrainians, so it's garbage. And if you look today at data, oh my gosh, you can see there are videos and photos now. They're basically mopping up whatever is in there. There are a bunch of their dispersed groups, including some of them which are fanatical and ready to kill civilians. This is precisely why they have been thrown in there. And yeah, but now we finally have the Russian society and even mainstream media pushing back against those people. But as I already stated, the FSB visits are long overdue, and probably it's going to happen now, because these shysters have been promoted as some kind of military expert, which none of them is. They never served into any serious capacity anywhere, and let alone in operational zones. They have no clue what they're talking about. So, and you probably remember one of those was taken in by Aid and his battalion from the Akhmat regiment, and he was shown around. Why did he change the tune? So I mean, this is the only way to deal with it, because you cannot. Low lives do not have honor, integrity. They don't have that. So, and the only thing they can do is, well, there are a bunch of their impetuses and drivers behind that, including sheer ambition, desire to make money, obviously, and validate themselves. It's like this fighter bomber. So the guy was kicked out of the armed forces because of unbecoming, So, and now, well, guess what? So it's just ridiculous. But yeah, the situation is under control. It's the whole idea was that they will throw it into the last storm, so to speak, and make the PR, and headlines in the West, which even CNN admits. Can you imagine? CNN admits this. They were doing primarily to keep the headlines. Well, they did for a while. So Western media obviously are lying now, but the mopping up continues. You can see yourself in terms of the dynamics of the losses. You can see yourself how many groups have been already taken prisoners. The latest one I saw was 20 minutes ago. There are other 5 ones are taken. And the hint was that it wasn't the martial law imposed, but counter-terrorist operation, counter-terrorism regime. It's completely different. It's a very limited, stop of the civilian rights, which are, of course, for the sake of the objective of the keeping other people, safe. And yeah, it's mopping up. And you would see, again, go on YouTube or Telegram channels. It's like stuffed, overflowing with the videos of how they were dealt with, and it's not nice. Their losses is. I know the one brigade already have been wiped out from the order of battle. The second one probably is being finished as we speak, and then, well, it's what was expected. Russians will go into Sumy region and set up the buffer zone. That's the end of it.
Let's talk about motivation, because there's mixed guesses as to what Zelensky and why Zelensky actually did this. So first, people said that he would go take the nuclear power plant and then try to kind of hold it as a bargaining chip for Zaporozhye power plant. And then others, talked about the Druzhba pipeline, the one for Slovakia, Hungary, and Austria. But then today they shifted again. Western media comes out and says, we don't really know why. And the Zelensky regime now claims that the attack was meant to boost morale and demonstrate that Ukraine is still in the fight. In your view, what was the actual reason behind this suicide mission?
Well, I mean, headlines. And basically, if you look attentively at the whole operation thing, and especially how the U.S. Army fought, which the U.S. Army, the Ukrainians followed the field manuals and operational manuals of the United States Army primarily. Well, then there are those chihuahuas from London who think that they matter a lot, but they don't. And so it's all, listen, when you look attentively at the juncture between the U.S. Army, for example, U.S. Armed Forces, and political dynamics within the United States, it is exactly the same repetition in Ukraine right now. It is all for PR and the internal dynamics for stay elected or stay politically meaningful in the overall, situation of the whatever imploding American political system. We know what was happening in Afghanistan. Generals have been lying for 10 years, while essentially the war was lost already by, 2006, 2007. And so Washington Post even published that. So same here, primarily for the morale issues and keeping the Ukraine in headlines, to give some food for people who run the basically country, which is the sewer of the American mainstream media. And the people who, just benefit from being around those. And as a result, when you are a graduate of the Harvard with degree in journalism, I will not allow you to mow the lawn in the front of my house, so, and that's the result. They did it. It's almost exact replica of the modus operandi in the United States. Do some for PR, show that we do something, the hell with the real military science. Well, nobody really studies real military science in the United States anymore. So they did it to show that they are, somehow viable still and boost morale. Well, we already saw how this boosting of morale is happening, but this is the way they have been designed from the onset. They have been trained by the NATO officers. They have been trained alongside with all those operational and field manuals, from the NATO, primarily US Army. And as a result, this is what you get. They fight like a U.S. Army. They fight as if they fight their Iraqi force in Gulf War. Well, there is news for them. Russia is not Iraqi force, So, and they are, and again, they don't have the ability to learn, the maneuver, to adapt, and things like that. What is happening? They adapt on the tactical level. Operationally, it's just a disaster. It's, as I already stated, this is what they want to try now in the West to kind of separate themselves, from those disasters, because obviously these are disasters attributed to the way they fight in NATO. That means what? They lose their wars. And we have this perfect demonstration of this in the Kursk area right now, where they're really good at shooting at the civilians. Pretty much that's what basically they have been there for. As per Kursk nuclear power station, again, people who thought that you can do that, well, good luck. Even if you would capture the R200 highway, what about sustainment? The gasoline of your rear, secured lines of communications. I mean, these are fantasies. I mean, again, fantasies, just complete fantasies. Those people have no idea what real military and real war of the 21st century is. So primarily it was the run into like the deepest they reached today. I believe it was 12 kilometers. And again, when you look at the maps, this is not how maps are drawn. The fact that you have, for example, diversionary recon group somewhere, deep, it doesn't mean that you have the force and secure the area. It means that you just running around there somewhere in the forest, and you will be mopped up inevitably. So there you go.
So this summer has been incredibly difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces all along the whole front line of the zone of the special military operation. And we heard Zalinsky earlier in the year say that he was promising another summer offensive. So we know that things are going bad. They're losing on critical axes in Chasiv Yar. They lost New York, and so on. But I'm wondering, what effect this Kursk incursion has on the front line, and what kinds of forces will Russia, if any, have to divert to Kursk, and will this impact things in the zone of the special military operation? I guess I'm kind of wanting your insights into what types of forces Russia is pulling to deal with this incursion in Kursk, and will it detract from their efforts along the front line of the SMO zone?
No, it's not going to detract anything, albeit it is a legitimate question, of course. In fact, it was part of the consideration, so to speak, of all this, incursion. No, and even today you read news, and Russians took another village and then another town, and actually there is a headline today, even in RIA News, and even Zglad. I use Zglad as primarily the news aggregator. I don't take them seriously. So that the tempo of operation increased on several axes, including the Pokrovsk axis, where there is a catastrophe. not unfolding. It is a catastrophe there. So that was also part of the issue, desperate attempt to show that they're viable, because obviously Pentagon is not completely, morons. There are very many morons, but there are some people who are really professionals, and they tell them that, to even Washington, that, hey, look at this. This is what happens, and this is bad. And that's kind of, gets into this development in the Kursk incursion. But the forces which have been transferred, there was a transfer, I believe, obviously Akhmat, part of the Akhmat brigade, and they are kind of, fast reaction force. They are really good. So there was 801st Brigade of Naval Infantry involved. But then again, the rest of it was pretty much reserves, which already have been deployed or pre-deployed in the depths in the Kursk area. So it just was the matter of pulling them closer to Kursk, and that's what happened. So I don't think so there is any effect. In fact, it's going to be opposite now. And after today, Mr. Putin stated things like, we're not going to be negotiating anymore. So, or, present ourselves as ready for negotiations. So that's their, they achieved that they didn't want to achieve, So, and there you go. And so it's doesn't have any serious, bearing on overall operation. In fact, it's a tactical thing. It's not even operational. It's a tactical level incursion, and it's being dealt with. So, but yeah, it's all about PR, and that's the only thing which NATO militaries can do and trained for.
Well, Russia sent, you mentioned earlier that it was an ATO. We also have CTOs, and then we have actual wars. Can you talk about, you touched on it a little bit. Can you go more in depth about why this is an ATO? What makes something a CTO, an ATO, and et cetera? And what does Russia do that is special or like just specific to an anti-terrorism operation?
Well, it's first, we need to keep in mind that anti-terrorism operation doesn't require your deployment of the massive combined arms forces. I mean, you still need forces, make no mistake. You still would use the combined armed forces, or, it's Russians have the ground forces, or общевойсковые, which is mean common troop, which is combined arms, essentially. So you still need those forces, you still need reserves, but they primarily will be involved not so much into fighting, headlong with all those, forces of like during this so-called counteroffensive and things like that. Obviously, the part of it, the elements of this are already there. They are organic to what you do, because you also sometimes encounter large forces. But the point is that it's purely tactical. And it is also very much described in terms of how to put it, also active law enforcement, if you wish. So you have also FSB force, local FSB force. They take those things and they treat them as terrorists. They do not treat them as the armed forces anymore. And so that is why even the judicial framework now, anybody who will be taken the prisoner of war, for example, they will be treated as terrorists. They're not going to be treated as the prisoners of war. And as you know, terrorists and, the Geneva Convention, they do not go together really well, So that's already a huge difference. And then, of course, primarily what is going to be happening there is as mopping up. You do not need this massive force, as I already stated, which needs to operate on some, strategic or operational axis. You have the situation, you have the area, you need to kind of enclose it, you have to evacuate civilians, those who want to go. There have been, believe me, there have been people who didn't want to go. Well, boy, they were sorry at some point of time. So, and that's the difference, essentially. No major combined arms operations. It's primarily mopping up, and as I already stated, let's put it this way, high intensity police operation. That's what it is.
So from there, I guess my question is, does the anti-terrorism operations in Belgorod and Bryansk, does it indicate anything about the long-term efforts by Russia, or an intention to expand its efforts to address the threat along its borders? Of course, they're going to have to push back in Kursk and are committing significant forces there. But my question really is, do you see Russia, the way this plays out in the long term, is Russia opening up another front to basically deal with Ukraine from the Belgorod and Bryansk regions, in addition to the zone of the SMO currently?
Well, it depends. It depends what forces Ukraine will be able to stretch one way or another. It is clear that now Russians are going into Sumy region. And it was kind of like, yeah, they're hanging out there. It better be done, So there's no doubt that the Sumy region will be, at least, including probably up to Sumy, the city of Sumy itself. So they are going there. There is a buffer zone. There will be buffer zone. Russians do not need Sumy, the city of Sumy. Russians do not need to put anybody else on their balance, so to speak. But the buffer zone will be created the same as it was created in Kharkov axis. So it's very easy. You go even on Google Maps, and you look at the highways and those roads, it's like, for example, when people ask, oh, why did they go through the first days of this Kursk incursion, which it was incursion? Why did they go through Aleshnya, for example, okay? And the other town, which was 15 kilometers away? Because they have the forest strips there. Most of it is the pretty much open area. There are fields, there are some bushes, but you need to survive. Guess what? You need those, ground roads, what is called village roads, and you need to stay close to the forests in the futile attempt to survive, having your armor and things like this, survive. Obviously, it doesn't matter for Russians. Russians will find you even in the, what is called Zelonka. Zelonka means green. And that's what happened. But this was the tactical thing, and then converge on this R200 and, which is highway, and drive towards Moscow, I assume, or maybe Vladivostok. So, and when you look at this, these are amateurs who planned that. Okay, and what can I say? They will be cleaned out. You can look up today the videos of the density of Russian fire along the border. You will see yourself. It's literally the whole first layer of the ground is dug out. So, and it's gonna be the buffer zone. And again, it's difficult to say what Russia decides to do now, So somebody will probably go deeper in Kharkov if they need to. Mm-hmm. There are always, all kinds of operational considerations. And again, you look at the density of force of whatever is left of armed forces of Ukraine. Why not to find a weak spot and do something? But in the end, you have to keep in mind, and here is the thing which many people try to avoid even facing. And this is, if you look attentively at even headlines in the last half a year, the thing which you notice there, not even half a year, I would say since the end of the so-called counteroffensive in 2023, you will not find any mentioning of the brotherly people by any Russian politician about Ukrainians. You will not find it. Before that, you would see Putin coming out, and the whole thing today is about wiping out mobilizational potential of Ukraine for generations to come. This is why Russians stand where they stand, and they allow this force come in, and they physically annihilate the armed forces of Ukraine and those people who fight for them from the West. But this is the secondary consideration. And when you look attentively, and many people have to ask the question, why there are so relatively few, not POWs, there are plenty of POWs, those who surrendered willingly. You know why? Not only because they are out there barrier troops, they shoot them into back, but because many of them, they fight this for the idea. They hate Russian guts. They view Russia as a Mordor, and they believe, many of them, you will be surprised, but they really believe that Russians are after their toilets, and microwaves, obviously. And I'm not kidding you. You read all those things, and you go and you talk to people who have connections, real connections on the ground there. And obviously, I'm not talking about the real serious intelligence and and they are brainwashed. They want the war. They still believe that they can win. They want Russians dead. They hate Russian gods, and especially new generation. My God. So, and this is what is this all about? It's either us or them, and Russia obviously goes with us, and them will be annihilated. Annihilated, not physically completely, but the most ideologically driven, fanatical part of population is being, which is primarily male population, is being annihilated. And that's the reality of the war. I'm sorry. These are the nincompoops who decided to go and play the big game, geopolitical game with the big guys. United States, as always, just chickened out, and they got themselves the best proxy they ever had. NATO never had the proxy as this. It was actually best European army at the start of the, with this exception of Russia. It was the best European army at the start of the special military operation. And it was driven. That's the thing. It's those moral cognitive factor which everybody tries to avoid, but it is not. That is why now, unlike it was in 2022, you have lines, bunch of Ukrainians sitting in Sheremetyevo airport in the what is called the aggregators. They sit there sometimes up to 2-3 days until FSB checks them. Because Russia already learned from its own mistake when essentially it imported under these auspices of the brotherly people how many sleeper cells they have now. And, so there you go. This is the factor which is never discussed, but it is what it is. So you literally have people coming from Pakistan in Sheremetyevo, okay? And they go through the border and customs patrol in like 5 minutes. And you have Ukrainians in, droves sitting there because guess what? Russians learned their lesson. They do not like Russians. Those who really consider themselves Russians, most of them, they already, have been, they left for Russia since 2014, 2015. And that's the real operational and security consideration, which you cannot forget.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see many examples. Well, we see this in the West, the demonizing narratives and how these are certainly used for one of the West's favorite strategies, which is promoting terrorism as a destabilization tool.
Yeah, it is.
And we've seen multiple examples in Russia just over the past few months. But talking about the spirit of brotherly unity, of course, we've seen terrible developments when it comes to Russia-Ukraine relations, of course, and the Baltics as well. The Baltics are another one.
Yeah.
But where things seem to be going a more positive direction in terms of Russia, cohesion with Russia is in Belarus. And so I wanted to ask you and turn toward the subject of Belarus in the aftermath of the situation in Kursk, or as the situation in Kursk is unfolding. Because I wanted to ask what you see are the implications for this provocation in Kursk for Belarus. And we've seen that Belarus is going to be deploying additional troops to its own border regions. And we've also seen complaints that the government has made about violations of its own airspace by Ukrainian drones. So I'm wondering what you see moving forward as the role of Belarus here and continuing to kind of put pressure on that northern border as well. And then what additionally you might expect, what does this mean, in terms of Belarus bolstering its support for Russia? You could speak to that.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I know we know that there are Russian troops there, and there is now the tactical, nuclear weapons are deployed there, and Lukashenko was bragging about it, But you have to understand, I'm not a specialist in Belarus. Get in touch with my good friend Vladimir Trukhan. Get him on the show. He will tell you everything about Belarus, and he is a big-time specialist in that. Okay, so I just do not want to go there and repeat pretty much general, platitudinal things, so to speak, about Belarus. It is the union state, and Belarus essentially being, how to put it, pulled, reined into real unified state. Or union state, if you wish. So, but what can I say? Lukashenko already stated that, Belarusians have to now think about, having new president and things of this nature. I don't know the internal dynamics there. I know they almost have been subverted by the combined West, by NATO, and there are still a fifth column there, which is very active. So, but Other than that, it's difficult for me to comment on this, So, but economically, listen, economically, Belarus cannot exist without Russia. Simple as that. And security-wise, too.
So let's go back down south. Even though Kursk is happening, we still have like an actual conflict as well. So one of our admin said, Mehdi, he wants to know if you think that the Russians will, how the Russians will handle and take Odessa, if at all.
Keep in mind, no, I think so that Odessa eventually will return, but it's the way it was going to return. First, you cannot attack Odessa. It's an architectural marvel of the Russian imperial architecture of the 18th century. It's a gorgeous city. It will need to be cleaned, obviously, and turned into proper, shape, if you wish, by Russians. But the most likely way it's going to happen is that, depending on the situation on the front and how Russians decide to proceed, that eventually it will be the ultimatum. It is already ultimatum that Ukraine has to turn itself into some kind of the highly autonomous remaining oblast, or if not, to get a confederacy of this oblast. And that means that inevitably Odessa, under these circumstances, especially when Ukraine is going to be completely demilitarized, and essentially this is Morgenthau plan, in a sense that they will have the agriculture, they will have probably 50,000-70,000 of the police force, and that's about it, likely armed police force. So once you have this, suddenly you have this confederation of different oblasts, and most of them will decide eventually what to do. Guess what? Even those Ukrainians who do not like Russians there, many Ukrainians, they go to Russia and they see that actually it is them who should be, going to Russia for the toilet bowls and microwaves, So, and this has a very serious, life-changing experience for them. So that means that at some point of time, they will be voting to, obviously, join Russia, as those for previous oblasts, Donbass, Zaporozhye, and Kherson did. It's probably a referendum, and there you go. So that's the only, humanistic way to do it, without going there militarily, losing your people for no reason. There's no reason to go there and attack them and hold these cities. So, and you want to obviously preserve the beauty of Odessa, no doubt about it. Odessa automatically means Nikolaev too, So it's kind of this strip of shore, so to speak, of the Black Sea.
Package deal, sort of. Yeah. I want to ask a question about the two heads of state. So first we'll start with Zalinsky. What I thought was interesting is, in regards to this excursion into Russia, I kind of wanted to know what the West thought about it. And their headline, which I think I have right here, invading Russia is Zelensky's riskiest decision yet. And that picture is also really interesting. But I went through and I read the article, and it totally was anti-Zelensky. This is in the London Times, and it's called the excursion risky 8 times. It was a short article, so it's clear that the West is not happy. And I kind of wanted to ask if you thought that this picture was kind of interesting. The way that he's being depicted now is very Hitlerian, or very, like, at least dictator. Like,
yeah, we know that. Absolutely. This is what Western mass media do. They can only do PR, essentially. This is what PR is. And psyops, so to speak, which is the part of the propaganda largely, or as they call it today, strategic communications. They strategically communicate, and this is London Times, which are genocidal, tabloid from London, which love nothing more than kill more Russians. But yeah, riskiest, the reason it is riskiest for them is, of course, the fact that West inevitably, as already happened, will be blamed. Russians do not care about Zelensky anymore. Neither they do about Ukrainians. What they care about, and of course the Russians have been majorly pissed off with this Kursk incursion, and they achieved absolutely opposite result, as natural for those people. But the point is, Russians point out now that it was this plan, all this thing has been created in Pentagon, And, well, London is just irrelevant, really, militarily.
Pentagon Junior, maybe?
Um,
Washington, D.C. Junior, that's London.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And so Russians point out it to the United States. And it was explicitly stated on many times that no, there will be no negotiations with really Zelensky. I mean, the Russians keep that, rhetoric open that we're ready to negotiate. But everybody knows that this is between Washington, D.C. and Moscow, period. It's just, you have this essentially the decomposing corpse of the best proxy Washington ever had. Ever. There never was it. They had the best army in Europe.
Yeah.
And guess what? They screwed it up. So that is, and Russians are in no mood to negotiate now with the United States.
Well, correct. And I want to play a clip. I believe this is Putin today. It's only a minute, and then I want to get your response to it.
Yeah.
Теперь ясно, что почему киевский режим отказывался от наших предложений вернуться к мирному плану урегулирования, так же, как и к предложениям заинтересованных и нейтральных посредников. Судя по всему, противник при помощи своих западных хозяев, он выполняет их волю, и руками украинцев Запад с нами воюет. Так вот, судя по всему, противник стремится к улучшению своих переговорных позиций в будущем. Но о каких переговорах вообще может идти речь с людьми, которые без разбора наносят удары по мирным людям, по гражданской инфраструктуре, либо пытаются создать угрозы для объектов ядерной энергетики? О чем с ними вообще можно говорить?
Yeah.
So do you think that the Kursk excursion actually just erased all chances of peaceful negotiations with Zelensky?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they never wanted to talk to Zelensky. Let's start. Yeah. Oh, come on. I mean, listen, this is a big guy's game. Listen, whenever Putin or Lavrov or anybody says, oh, yeah, we're ready to talk, let's go back to Istanbul, format. Well, guess what Istanbul format was? If you look attentively, even at that time, which, by the way, Ukrainians tentatively signed on, was complete. They wouldn't have actually serious military force to start with, and then essentially they would be, there is this caveat, constant, taking in considerations the reality on the ground. So it was all the game. Now it's official. We're not gonna talk, period. Before that, you didn't have this, what is called casus belli, diplomatic casus belli, to say, oh, no, we are open for the, negotiations. Of course we are. Let's go back to the Istanbul format and things like that. But with the consideration of the realities, which, of course, 4 new districts, 4 new oblasts of Russia, which are part of Russia now. Now, forget it. There was a diplomatic casus belli. Militarily, it's not, the operation would continue no matter what. So, and there you go. So Russia officially can wash its hands and said, we're done. And guess what? Yeah, then again, frankly, we're not even talking about Zelensky. He is, he's the dead man walking, and Ukraine as such. We're talking about Washington. Who can you talk to in Washington? Show me anybody you can have any serious negotiations in Washington. We're talking about people who are completely delusional there. And the whole, atmosphere in DC it's like delusion. They drank their own Kool-Aid for so long, and they're so incompetent. Look across the board, from intelligence to diplomacy to military. It's just ridiculous. It's like talking to kindergarten children. They are teenagers, essentially, with throwing the tantrum. They all are. This is what you get when you go to the Ivy League in the humanities, so-called elite producing machine. They don't produce elites. America didn't have a real statesman, since the times of George Bush Sr., period. This was the last time the United States had a competent leadership. It was not necessarily the best, but they were competent. They had James Baker. They had people who really knew what they were talking about. Look, show me. They are clowns, essentially. Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, the kid who was his only national security thing was he ran Hillary's campaign. He has a degree in political science. Really? Can you imagine, I mean, somebody with the scale of the Patrushev, with the, you know, the talking to this dude? It's like talking to a kid. I mean, this is like...
Well, maybe when Kamala gets elected, Putin will want
oh my God. Yeah, that will be, oh my God. It's just that would be awesome. Let me tell you, we're gonna live in some fireworks, let me tell you. Oh yeah, and those people who run America, actually, you know, those, you know, back rooms and all this deep state, they're morons, basically. They're avatars, just basically, that's why they have the avatars who are imbeciles, okay? So, and yeah, if you get the cackling idiot, you know, as the president, our country is done. You know, I'm American, essentially. I'm living here for 30 years. I'm a US citizen. I'm like, look at this as like, what the hell, man? I would rather vote for Clinton. At least he knew, you know, oh gosh, it's unfreaking believable. It's, there's nobody to talk to.
Well, Kamala would be a great symbolic representation of just how
it's like Mencken, it's like Mencken who said that in the end, you know, our people's heart's desire will be fulfilled, and we will get where the White House will be adorned with a moron. This is H.L. Mencken from 1920s, and my gosh, the guy was good. Well, at that time, American culture was vibrant, and there were many talented journalists and writers and things like that. So and now you have that's what it is.
Well, I want to stay on the subject of the competency of U.S. leaders and military officials, but I want to zoom back in a little bit on Kursk, because, as you mentioned, you know, regardless of the fact that this won't really change the ultimate outcome, it does have pretty significant implications, psychological implications on the Russian population, and also political implications for Putin, as you described, to be able to, you know, wash his hands, and so to speak. But of course, Kursk was the famous place where the biggest tank battle in history occurred in World War II. And Russia's sovereign territory has not been invaded or incurred upon in this way since World War II as well.
No, since Belgorod, there was incursion in Belgorod. So
true.
It was smaller, but it still
Smaller,
was same thing. It just, this one is larger.
But I guess my question is, so for the United States, this also has implications, because it changes the negotiating positions, of course, as we talked about. But I'm wondering, you know, so now we're seeing in the Western media, the United States and Western media seem to suggest that the United States didn't know that this was going to happen. What is the likelihood of that was true? Because of course, this takes for something like this to happen, it takes a significant troop buildup. We know that Russia was even shelling this area weeks in advance. So how could United States officials be claiming this? Is there any veracity to this claim? Are they so incompetent that it actually did catch them by surprise as well? Or is this just a lie?
It is a lie. And again, how many times we have to repeat that all operational planning is done in Ramstein. It is done by Pentagon. And that is why, if you read my latest book, we knew it was bad.
Wait, the latest book, where is it? I pre-ordered it, and where is the book?
On the 15th.
You're going to have to come back after we're finished reading it, okay?
Sure, yeah. And the point is, I mean, come on. Nobody buys this garbage, you know. Mr. Syrskyi was responsible for bringing Ukrainian armed forces of Ukraine to NATO standards. They fight in the NATO standards. They think like NATO standards, you know. So, and its operational planning was done by Pentagon and all those clowns from the, Europe. So, and as I already stated, it's all lie, of course. It was again planned in Washington, D.C. and Ramstein, and they are incompetent. They can fight only for their, PR effect. And that's why. And then there is another thing. which many people again do not want to recognize, and that is why we have the situation that that this fog has to be cleared out. Pentagon is in the butthurt mode. They never saw anything like this. They have the acute case of the professional envy and spite. Oh, come on. Anybody takes seriously this, the show in the Gulf War? Really? You call it the war? You call it, beating the 5-year-old kid in the sandbox with impunity by the 22-year-old MMA fighter? So, and then suddenly they have the situation, which is, and there you go. So everything is being done not only for some, obviously PR effect, no doubt about it. We already understand this. But it is done to spite, to kill more Russians. There's a hatred of them, because obviously when you get this acute case of the complex of inferiority, and when your military history, especially of the end of the 20th century and 21st century, is basically a collection of confabulated military stories, fairy tales, the finest fighting force, which loses all of its wars.
Right.
I mean, how the hell this happened? It's like, Cuba Gooding Jr. in what's the name of this movie says, show me the money. Show me your credit history. They are not even the same league with the Russians. And yet, so they try. And now they, of course, come out and say, because it's failure, again, which was expected, there is a complete destruction of the rich, crucial resource they had for armed forces of Ukraine. There's a bunch of the British and French and other NATO, volunteers there. They're killed in industrial quantities. So, and there you go. Now they suddenly have to what? Detach themselves from this failure yet again, and they begin to lie that, oh, Zelensky did it on his own. Really? So you supply him with communications, you supply him with this means of detection, you have literally senior officers stuck on the operational level, brigade level, everywhere, every single brigade. So you have the you have the 24/7 ISR with all those E3 sentries and flying around. You have this satellite communications and satellite intelligence working 24/7, providing the targeting for Ukrainians. And you didn't know? You planned it. It's just that you have to come to the mirror and say, dude, I suck, because they do suck. They are not good. Okay, West Point as the military education facility is a joke, really. So you have these people. You know who Mr. Kavoli is by education? He has degree in biology. Mr. Keane, the General Keane, he has degree in accounting. Accounting is good profession, by the way. So you have literally those people who lost every freaking single war in their life, and they try to plan and fight Russians. Even Trump got it. Even Trump got it in his interview. He stated, remember this? A week ago, look it up. He said, they're fighting the machine which defeated Hitler and Napoleon.
Yep.
Yeah, U.S. Army doesn't even register there.
Right.
Okay? So, and those people continue to do this, and this is done now. Well, it's desperation too, but there's a lot of professional envy. There is a lot of this desperation coming from it, and they will continue to do what they only know. Did you read their field manuals of the U.S. Army? It is written for the table of organization and equipment stuck in 1990s and fighting mostly third world crap holes with people who cannot shoot back, essentially. So this is what is this all about. And you look at these dudes. Are you crazy? And Hitler tried.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, in the echoes of all these fantasies, there's the echoes of Nazism, really, in the big lie after big lie and constructing a fantasy that will ultimately plunge you into a suicidal war.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we're seeing here. But I did want to end on a slightly more upbeat note, besides the fact that the U.S. is plunging back into historical fascism, so to speak. But we're seeing the Army 2024 Military Technical Forum this week. And I was really excited to ask you about this. We've seen the introduction of some new missile defense systems designed for combating drones, new helicopters. But I was wondering if you had anything that you were keeping your eye on in terms of military tech development that could make a real impact on the battlefield.
Well, I've been writing about it for second decade now, right about it. Russia has air defense which is untouchable. It's simply out of it. It's a different galaxy, okay? And when you see the new developments coming in, and even Mr. Putin said 95% plus combat effectiveness. Of course, you get leakers. Of course, some things fly in, they get through, but the mitigating factor is unprecedented historically. So I will be following. We know S-500 now and S-550 are in serial production. My issue will be to get even hints of what will come after S-500 and S-550. That will be something world never saw before. The rest of it, we know that there is new generation of Zircon, which is much longer range. Not that this range is small, and they say it's Mach 13 plus. So yeah, it is a complete game changer. We're looking at a paradigm shift in warfare, and there's a lot to look at. But air defense, I am interested. What's next? And we know the next isn't there. We know the next is being developed, and we will see it fairly soon. And when we'll see it, we're gonna have our jaws on the floor. So it's not that. Yeah, you look at the data on the air defense force, it's just incredible. It's incredible. There's nothing like. Yesterday, Mr. Belarusov stated 40,000. Oh no, the chief Almaz-Antey, the director general of Almaz-Antey, which produced all those things. So he says from the start of special military operation, 40,000 targets have been intercepted. You understand this number? That means what? NATO has literally nothing left in its gas tank. So that's what it is. And when you have the, even if you go to simply 95%, you can do the simple proportion and you will get yourself how much was thrown primarily on Russian civilians and how much was intercepted. It's just astonishing. It's just, there's nothing like that ever in the history. So, and that's the thing which I'm following very attentively. Of course, I'm interested in other things, so, but what's next? What is there? What will be this S-600 or S-700, because when you look at the data of S-500, it's just, good God. And now we have, and there is a rumor that thing just, and that has strategic implications. Because starting from S-500, you are having a full-blown anti-intercontinental ballistic missile capability. And that means what? Mitigating of even massive strike of the nuclear weapons by the United States. And that changes the game. That is why Russians stated, well, we don't care about START. We don't care about the new treaty, So there's why it's like, in my state, you can quote me. You can say that Martyanov said it, and I can talk to any general in Pentagon or Joint Chiefs of Staff. United States lost the arms race. Simple as that. Across the board. The only thing they have now, United States, in terms of its ISR, because the constellation there is still larger than that of Russia. But that also is being, kind of addressed. So.
And our last question, you so kindly described military bloggers as, I believe the word was nincompoops. So how can, tell our listeners, how can the average person effectively kind of, we are saturated, not with our old military bloggers, but we got a whole batch of new ones from the Palestinian conflict. So how can the average person effectively navigate the information war? And what strategies can they use to filter out misinformation?
Oh my God. There are a number. I am subscribed to my friends Telegram channel, who I know who those people are. The highest level professionals, operational level officers, some with the sights into the strategy. So there are a number of Telegram channels, and guys, you are good. they can go to my blog, which I'm constantly blogging about it. I have my Telegram channel in Russian too. They forced me because Vkontakte is behaving. So yeah, and so my good friends Kosmans, so they are really good. This is cabal of the real good level officers. So I mean, you can call on Oleg Shalandin, Vladimir Trukhan, all those people. They would gladly participate. You will need to have the good interpreter. I obviously will not do, so you'll have to find good.
We have some. We have a few. I wouldn't make you do that anyway.
So anyhow, and yeah, that's pretty much the only way you can do it. So there are obviously good sources like Brian Berletich. Brian is excellent. Yeah, he is definitely very thoughtful, very informed man. So definitely him. Guys on Duran, they provide a wider kind of, so. And Larry Johnson, obviously. Larry, yeah. So both old friends, So yeah, these are people with damn serious military and intelligence, background. They know how to think. They know how to develop information. They know how to run all those competing hypothesis things. They compared. That's why they called analysts. So and obviously Nima gets most of the time excellent people. So yeah, there are plenty of people around who, obviously, I do not always agree with what is said on Judge Napolitanos, for example. But again, Judge provides some good insights very often. So I mean, there are plenty of people who speak about Matthew Haw. So I mean, he is a combat veteran. He's a Marine Corps guy. So there are people to go around. Obviously, they are being shadowed and but it's fine. I'm on the same position too, So and Scott Ritter,
Well, he's busy right now with the FBI.
Oh, yeah, we know that he's busy. Yeah, so it's
I'm busy. Scott's a little tied up. Well, thank you everybody, and thank you so much, Andrei. We'll be calling you at the end of August when we finish the book, guys. Make sure you do go out and purchase Andrei's or pre-order. It's coming out in 3 days. Andrei's new book about how America's losing, obviously. And we will see you next time with I don't know who. I think Daniel McAdams. Andrei, why don't you just take us out with a nice Russian send-off?
До свидания. That's